Hi, this is Jennifer McKenzie. I am currently a K-12 district teacher librarian in Siuslaw School District, which is located in Florence, Oregon. I'm also one of Antioch's Ed.D. Students, and this is my final reflection for social justice and leadership class. So I wanted to specifically talk about three things. I've mentioned these three items throughout our course discussion posts, and I would just really want to reflect on implementing some of the learnings from this class into my practice, especially as I'm here back at work getting ready for this next academic school year. So I wanted to talk about the 360 assessment and how I found that useful. My Western Regional Educator Network design team and some of the work that I'm doing and how components of social justice and leadership are manifesting in that work. And then also the work that I do for the Oregon Association for School Libraries. Okay, so just quick background about me and leadership in general. I am a former military officer. I was in the United States Army Reserves for over 12 years. I was mobilized to work with wounded soldiers out at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C. I've done company command. I've been in charge of groups of 500 plus soldiers. I've managed multi-million-dollar budgets. And when I think about leadership, my military career always stands out because you definitely exercise your leadership muscles in the military. And it was interesting to reflect on my previous military background and the components of leadership that we learned from this class. Super interesting. I absolutely believe in that phrase, we rise by lifting others, particularly in the military. You have to protect people with your life. That's a very interesting form of leadership to be a part of. Next, when I think about leadership, I just think about my teaching career. So I'm entering year 20 this school year. What a monumental year, right? I love my job. I love being an educator. I've always been a teacher leader. I've been called a stone catcher whilst functioning in educational environments. And a stone catcher is someone who lifts up those around you who need help being lifted up. We did throughout the course of this class talk about the difference between servant leadership and adaptive leadership. I really appreciate the terminology that we've learned from this class. And adaptive leadership is the practice of mobilizing people to tackle tough challenges and thrive. Adaptive change stimulates resistance. All right, so not always easy, but you get the work done. And I feel like that's echoes what type of leader I am. And there is that stone catcher, a person with power and privilege who stands between those who cast stones and those who are daily injured by the politics of injustice, inequity, hate, and violence. Okay, so there we go. And then I currently find myself president-elect of the Oregon Association of School Libraries. So I shifted from being a classroom English language arts teacher to being a teacher librarian about 8 years ago. And of all my leadership positions, library leadership is probably the most tricky, cumbersome, and challenging because you're always in a position of influence, but not in a position of authority, and that can be cumbersome to navigate. All right. This is a quote that I always live by. It's hanging up right outside my office door right now. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel, by Maya Angelou. Library leadership tends to be very relational, so this quote definitely holds true for all of the library leadership that I do. So I've just highlighted throughout my slides a couple of the key components, ideas, concepts that really stood out. And John Dugan's text was our guiding text for this class. And the 360 assessment that we all did I think we all found to be super beneficial. It's always good to get feedback, and John Dugan, this textbook in the 360 assessment just reminded me to continually collect that feedback. John Dugan is also a part of this Aspen Institute. And this is a quote from him. At few times has the need for a generation of values-driven, community-oriented youth leaders been more important. We can no longer take leadership developments for granted. We must provide opportunities for youth to cultivate their talent to address growing political, social, and scientific issues, not in some distant future, but today. Okay, so John Dugan, author of our text, a developer of the fabulous assessment tool we all use, and then also part of this Aspen Institute with the primary purpose of developing leaders, okay? So the tool that we did, I included a snapshot of it because one thing I thought that was really interesting, I had over 25 different people evaluate me, and they were from my library network, from my district network, from my in-house library staff here in the district. And I had multiple people ask if they could in turn use this evaluation tool to get feedback on their leadership. So it was a powerful tool, a succinct, concise tool. And it provided some really good feedback. Kevin and I were partners throughout this course. So we both chose the route of doing these recorded verbal conversations about our leadership philosophy, as well as about our 360 feedback. Totally appreciated my conversations with Cav. And so a couple of the things that came up from my 360 survey, and I knew this about myself. I'm always like, I get down to business. I'm a hard worker. People appreciate my leadership style. One of the room to improve comments is like, hey, Jen, maybe pause and take some time to celebrate. Because I just kind of tend to gloss over the celebrating phase of leadership work, and I just move on to the next thing, right? So a couple of very specific things that I'm implementing, like I'm here at my desk at school right now, getting ready for this upcoming school year, and a couple of very practical ways that I'm implementing the feedback was I'm continuing to regularly survey people. I'm continuing to practice micro affirmations and continuing to inspire. So what that looks like is every fall, I get 30 minutes in every single building with the staff of every building across the district. And I do a needs assessment. It informs the work that we do the rest of the year. But I have also included, because I do this every single year, and then I compare progress year after year. So I've included now a couple of those leadership survey questions into my needs assessment, so I can remember to collect that annual feedback on how Jen is doing as a leader in serving her staff. Another quick way that I've implemented, one of the things I need to do more frequently is to celebrate, to pause, and practice recognition and celebration. So this is a little snapshot of my annual yearly game plan document. And it just helps me remember quarter to quarter all the big major things that I need to not forget. And so I've tucked in some celebration times once a quarter with my library staff on my calendar, so I don't forget to do those important celebrations. And then another thing that I am practicing is just remembering again to recognize, celebrate, share the good word, share the good news with everyone. And so I actually kick out weekly slides, and I'm going to remember to just put a picture every single week that's celebrating the good work with that we're doing. Okay. The second thing I wanted to talk about, key concepts learned from this course, and we spoke about this in the discussion boards, was the importance when doing leadership work to collect feedback and the importance of educator voice. All right, so I had mentioned in one of our discussion posts, and I had a couple of people ask me questions about it actually, the equity, diversity, and inclusion work that I'm doing for the Western Regional Educators Network. Okay, and the WREN is, you can see per our mission statement, it's an educator-led, improvement-focused network that elevates and embraces teacher voices by emphasizing the Oregon equity lens to interrupt historical patterns of inequities and support educators through every stage of their career. All right. And our Western Regional Educator Network has a very specific aim or goal. And it is, we will create more inclusive and equitable school cultures in order to increase the percentage of teachers of color in the region from 9.8 to 14.3% by June 2023. Okay, very specific goal or aim of increasing BIPOC educator presence and voice in the region. All right, so here is a snapshot of where I'm located and where the Western WREN is situated. Here is that aim statement and how we're gonna go about doing that. We're gonna recruit teachers of color. We're gonna retain teachers of color, and then here's specific ways we're gonna do that work. We do follow the continuous improvement model. One of our classmates said, hey, it's like you're doing a whole entire dissertation topic just on this WREN and equity work in SIUSLA. Yes, it is a lot of work. And it dovetails and ties into Antioch's mission statement, as well as the mission statement of the equity work that our school library organization is working on. So this quote, when I interviewed for SIUSLA School District, I always ask about technology and I always ask about equity. So when I asked at the very end of my interview, and this was 3 years ago, when I asked, hey, what kind of equity work is the district doing and what kind of work can I get involved in? A response from one of the administrators in my interview was, well, we don't really have them, BIPOC people, so we don't really do that equity work. Okay, so just by virtue of making that statement, I knew that we had some work to do. So last year we pulled a group of people together to form that WREN team that's sponsored by folks at the state level. It's funded work. Okay, so we're funding the good work that's happening in the region. And we know we have some work to do, right? So here's a map of our journey. So we created our design team. We made sure that we had diverse voices, so representation from across all grade levels, interdisciplinary, people of color. We set out to survey people and collect empathy interview data to really grasp or understand the issues at hand, right? So what else are we seeing beyond this statement that I experienced before I even became employed in the district, right? Like what else is going on? And then after we interviewed everyone, we're like, well, so what are our next steps going to be? We collected all this data. We've had a lot of folks tell us there are a lot of issues, equity issues going on in SIUSLA. So what are we going to do next? One of the things we had to remind our team is that things aren't getting worse. We're just uncovering the issues, right? Sometimes when you begin asking people about issues of equity, some of that feedback can really be really hard to hear. Some of the instances, scenarios that people have experienced can be really hard to hear. But we're just uncovering things, right? Things aren't getting worse. We're just uncovering them. And so this is the work that we're doing this upcoming year, okay? And again, it's all going back to the idea of the importance of voice in terms of leadership from this class. So we are seeking collaborative partnerships to enhance voice, all right? The 4 specific task force that we have identified for our work for this upcoming year is making better connections with our tribal folks. Like, we are called Sayusla School District. We are named after our local tribes, but we do not have a good working relationship with the tribe. Okay, so I'm on that team to strengthen and enhance those relationships and begin to better embed tribal resources into our district curriculum. The second task force is intentional onboarding. So when we hire brand new staff, making sure that they feel welcomed, that they have a mentor, that they have some really intentional onboarding so that they feel cherished and respected in our school district, right? It's the little things that are the big things. So that's a really big deal, is just welcoming people into our space. The third task force is equitable professional learning. We had a lot of folks tell us that, yeah, we have PD left and right, but when do we ever get PD that's very specific to equity? So we really want to focus on that this upcoming school year. And then this last one, cultural celebrations. This is something that library services introduced to the district 3 years ago when I became the district teacher librarian. But we follow the American Association of School Libraries cultural celebrations every single month. We have a mapped out calendar. And we want to make that an institutionalized district thing. Like, we are Sayusla School District. We respect and honor all cultural celebrations every single month. And here's how we celebrate together. Okay, so little things that are big things, but again, are focusing on educator voice. Okay, and then shifting into the third component or key concept or key takeaway. I always love and always use hashtag better together when I'm talking about our Oregon Association of School Libraries. And my work with OASL overlaps quite a bit with my work for Fulbright. And I just completed a Fulbright Teachers for Global Classrooms exchange where I went to Peru this summer. And the whole time I'm like, hashtag better together. We are all better together. Okay. So Fulbright's mission is 100% revolves around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. All of the countries via the United Nations got together years ago and said, hey, we're on a mission to make this world a better place. These are our 17 specific goals. Every human in every country on every continent on this planet deserves these 17 things. And how are we going to work together, better together, hashtag better together? How are we going to work together to make this happen? And then it extends that. And my mission as a Fulbright Teachers for Global Classrooms participant is to celebrate the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, to teach the 17 Sustainable Development Goals to everyone I encounter, to include my school district and my statewide library network. And then we also focus on these 4 domains of global competence, all right? So can our students recognize perspectives, theirs as well as other people's? Can they communicate their ideas globally with diverse audiences? Do our students take action? They not only learn about issues, but they take action to make this world a better place. And are they investigating the world beyond their immediate environment? Okay, we talk about local global learning. Okay. So one of the main concepts that we learned at the tail end of class was just about systems thinkers. And this was a quote from our text. Systems thinkers function as local and global community members who use the concepts, habits, and tools of systems thinking to understand the complexities of systems and to face school, work, and life challenges with an informed capacity to identify, leverage action, and achieve desired results. Okay. All right, so the 2 graphics that I have here, again, hashtag better together, right? So in a lot of the library work that I do, I am our incoming president-elect for the Oregon Association of School Libraries. And I just can't stop thinking about how we should have a West Coast library coalition, right? Between the professional school library organizations of Washington, Oregon, and California. I see all three of our statewide organizations duplicating work. And I'm a firm believer in the phrase, let's work smarter, not harder. And so some specific things that I would like to work on during my presidency, and it's kind of like a 3-year presidency. I'm president-elect. Next year I'll be president, and the following year I'll be past president. And during this 3-year chunk of time, I have a little bit more leeway to implement some solutions to problems that I see. And so one of the things I want to institute is this West Coast Coalition. I want to form an agreement between our association boards to do a little bit more shared leadership and communication. So even if it's just CCing the other executive body from Washington and California after we have our regular Oregon body meetings, just sharing communication, I think would be amazing. Another super simple thing that I would love to implement is sharing our social media posts. Washington, Oregon, and California, all within the past year, has been targeting state legislative actions. We're all advocating for a representative at the state level. Like, we do not have a library media specialist individual on staff at the Oregon Department of Education. So we just, we were proposed a bill, right, that was just denied this past June in the state of Oregon. But I see similar things going on in Washington and California. So we would all strengthen our cause if we would just do some shared leadership and even duplicate our social media posts, right? Work smarter, not harder. If Washington's got a similar thing, legislative action happening, and they're doing social media posts for it, well, Oregon, let's just duplicate social media posts through tools using like Canva, right? Just, we're better together, work smarter, not harder. Let's duplicate our social media posts. And then another thing that I have asked, and all 3 states up and down the West Coast need, but we don't have, are just shared mini lessons, right? We're working on increasing staffing so that every district in our state has a certified teacher librarian at the helm of every school library. We know that's not the case on the West Coast. So oftentimes our libraries are run by uncredentialed classified staff members, and sometimes they don't always have the resources that we need. So we should have a catalog of canned mini lessons that all 3 state organizations could use, right? And we could develop that together. So those are just 3 ideas of things I have not enacted yet, but I would love to enact, right? We're better together. And then I've got this picture of the globe because my whole point of my Fulbright, like, here I am located in Florence, Oregon on the West Coast. I worked in Lima, Peru, and then Moquegua, which is near the southern tip of Peru. And we were looking at like, I went down with a research question, and it was all about library media science resources, access to technology, Wi-Fi, etc. So I was asking questions like, well, what does Wi-Fi coverage look like in Peru versus Florence, Oregon, in the United States? What does school library resources look like in Peru versus the United States? How can we share our knowledge base and exchange knowledge between Peru and the United States as it pertains to library media resources, technology, and Wi-Fi and infrastructure? Okay, so again, it's local, turning local problem, or instead of just looking at a local problem, viewing it as a global problem, local, global, and Fulbright calls that glocal learning. Okay. All right, so those are my key takeaways, how it 100% is embedded in the work that I'm doing as I'm preparing for the school year. Thank you so much. And Gary and fellow classmates, I really appreciated the coursework this summer. Okay, bye.